So Phil, you want to start us out?
Well, I just want to welcome everybody. And if you want to talk and we still can see everybody, raise your hand. This way we'll recognize you and we won't all be talking at once.
The electronic way of raising your hand.
Well, yeah, we have a way to, under reactions there on the right-hand side at the bottom, if you touch that, you'll see that the first option is to hit and raise your hand. So that's the official way to do it. If you haven't learned that on Zoom, this is a good time to do it. And then you can do the same thing to lower your hand when you're done. And you can also mute yourself over on the lower left, which is helpful if somebody else is talking or you hear some noise in your background. So it's nice to do that. And I'm recording this if anybody is not aware of that, so that we can have a Mark Erickson, who I hope is he's recognized. There he is, Mark. There he is. He can do his magic in a couple or 3 weeks, and then it'll appear on our website.
Right.
So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Diane, who will say a few words of start with here.
Well, thank you. We welcome all to you. And there's April Helen too. Good to see you, April Helen. And Daryl, thanks for coming. This is wonderful. And everybody who's popping up very quickly here. We're so glad to see your faces and hope that you enjoy our presentation. Our speaker, Thomas Harjala, is here, and he'll be giving us a real run through for how we're going to talk to other people about this crazy book we read. I wanted to let you know. Oh yeah, everybody say hello to everybody else. Oh, Bob and Betsy, there you are. And Andrea, thank you. Timothy, you're coming from Texas? Oh, Timothy's muted.
Yeah, Texas.
All right, where in Texas are you coming from?
It's a little birdville called Granbury.
Well, I'm from Texas too, from the big city, Dallas. So welcome.
Thank you.
And Debbie's here, and Rapa. Can you unmute Rapa? Am I saying that right? R-A-H-P-A? Maybe he can hear too, hear us? And Rod.
Alt A is the keyboard command. You've got to be quicker to unmute and mute.
So let's get on with it now. I wanted to let you know what's coming up next. Before we get into the rest of the program, our next gathering is going to be for Jesus's birthday. We traditionally have a pool party on Jesus's birthday. It's on August the 21st, if you want to put that in your calendars. And it takes place in Anaheim. Those of you who have access to Anaheim, we go to Mark's house and have a pool party as normal. And it's a lot of fun. And we're not going to have the Zoom there, so you'll have to come to Anaheim to see this one.
Mark and Wayne and Ron's house.
Mark and Wayne and Ron, thank you very much. And they are wonderful hosts and great cooks. So the food is always just outstanding. And we generally have some music of some kind and a lot of fun. The next one will be in November. So we quarterly put on these programs. November the 13th, if you want to book that in your calendar, that's our Thanksgiving. And we will be, guess what, in person at the Unitarian Church in Anaheim. You'll get a flyer on that. And we put on a very big spread, turkey and dressing, the whole works. So come for Thanksgiving dinner on November the 13th. Again, the time is Saturday, 3 to 5, as usual. And it'll be so good to see people in person. assuming we don't have a more shutdown before then. But we'll keep you posted.
Well, we hope to see you all in person at Jesus's birthday first.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
That comes first before
That comes
Thanksgiving.
Before we start having the introduction to our speaker, I want to leave you with for you to listen for a very interesting concept I've come across that I'm sure Thomas will be using. So see if you can detect it. There is a book that describes this. It's called Think Again by Adam Grant. Think Again by Adam Grant. I listen only to books because that's all I have time for, but I listen as I'm doing other things like driving. And this book is so exciting regarding this particular concept that we're going to be talking about today, in which they describe what they call motivational interviewing. And motivational interviewing describes how to listen so that other people change. Let me, the quotes are so fragmented in the book that I just pulled them all together. It says,
Uh-oh. Did she freeze?
no, I didn't freeze, I'm right here.
We're not muted. Be careful what you say.
Yes, I'm being very careful.
All being recorded.
Is that motivational thinking, interviewing means asking open-ended questions like, what do you think of this and how do you think of that? I'm looking for my notes, which I just misplaced here. And it says that we listen very carefully with the intent of only one thing, understanding where they're coming from. Not the intention of trying to convince them of anything or convert them, but just to hear them tell us what their current path has been doing for them, or any open-ended question you ask, you listen. And in this listening, they're having to examine their own basis from which they're coming. You're holding up a mirror is what you're doing. And that mirror then reflects back to them what how they got to where they are in their thinking. And and it's an examination process you're inviting them to take part in, which then may result in their finding that maybe there's little basis for what they're thinking. Who knows what conclusion will come from it, but they have used this on interviewing the people from the South that you're talking about who are so terribly convinced about what they're doing and where they got their thoughts. And then if you have the intention of trying to convince them, we all have these highly sensitive detections of someone trying to convince us or sell us. And so if that is part of your intention, then they will detect that and it will close down the process. So I want to leave this, watch for what Thomas is going to tell us. You'll see him demonstrating that, I'm sure, in careful listening, which actually does change people. So Phil, why don't you do our introductions to our speaker?
You're muted.
Myself, thank you. There was an airplane going by and I didn't want to
Oh,
disrupt the conversation or the hearing of Diane. So what I wanted to do though is to have a little remembrance of Jesus. After all, we are more than two gathered together. And I don't want to make it a long one, but I want to recall that he said his life in the flesh is the bread of life. And as a one time practicing Catholic, it was nice to have the clarity of, you know, the Urantia book statement that was closer to what he said. In fact, probably exactly what he said, at least, you know, translated into English. And so, you know, his life in the flesh is the bread of life. We need to learn about that like we have bread. And then recall that he said the cup of blessing, and I've got a little wine here for that, is the symbol of the Spirit of truth coming to all mankind. So I want to thank you, Jesus, who's present with all the celestial community here. Thank you. So now I'd like to introduce Thomas Arhala, who's a 50-year reader.
50.
Yeah, 50 years, it says here. On
I'm
our,
almost done. I'm almost done reading the book too.
and we never lie. And he's on the Fellowship Outreach Committee, where he's distributed thousands of books and spoke with tens of thousands of truth seekers over the last 45 years. He's learned how to start a conversation without mentioning the Urantia book, and you know, raising hackles and starting an argument. He's found methods to share the revelatory truths without others, such as co-hosting the Cosmic Cafe for many years, inviting conversations on many topics. So we're hoping that he'll teach us a little better how to introduce the Urantia book without raising the hackles or the red flags that people from the South or from the North or to the East or the West have. So Thomas, take it over for us. Tell us how to do this. Show us how to do this.
Oh, I promise you'll fully understand when we're done. Thank you, Phil. And thank you, everybody, for being here. It's really great to be around such great people. And we're literally going to have a conversation. You know, we're here just to talk, right? And the thing I really want to do today is instill in you the value of speaking, the power of speaking, and the difference it makes when you choose to speak in a certain way to people. And Diane, what you said was really great about listening, because half of speaking, half of communicating is listening, if not 3/4. So we can talk about that more later. So today I want to share with you that there's certain things happening in the Urantia book movement. There's a lot happening in the Urantia book movement, but right now there's some efforts being made to create conversations that anybody that's a truth seeker can just step into, just come to our place and we're going to have a conversation. And I think there's a need for this right now because so many people have been polarized, they've been fractionalized, they've been marginalized. You put an eyes on the end of it and they've had it done to them, right? And people are in their corners, they're frustrated, they're confused, you know, it's kind of quite a challenging time. You know, we got the planet kind of imploding on us, around us, right? And people are wondering what the heck's going on. And I always go back to the Jesus model, right? I'll always go back to that. Like, what would Jesus do if he was here today? You know, he'd probably encourage his followers to go out and talk to people wherever they are. Talk to them in the streets, talk to them online, talk to them, right? Because when you think about the power of language, right? You one good example I have is Melchizedek. Let's consider his life, right? He was here 4,000 years ago, popped up into a herder's tent one day, just kind of unannounced, and he left 90 years later. And all that he really did was talk, right? He didn't have a magic wand. He didn't perform miracles. He talked to the shepherds and the townspeople and whoever he met, right? And he had a following. And after a while, he disappeared. He just left. And you'd think everything would have just fallen apart. Oh, our leader's gone. But what he said sat in the minds of these people, right? And their families and their kin and their relatives and their next generation. And it traveled along across continents, right? For hundreds and hundreds of years. These truths were passed down through families and in villages and around campfires. And about 1,400 years after Melchizedek leaves, there's this great religious revival appears on the planet for some mysterious reason. Taoism, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism, all these religions all of a sudden appear. And now we know from the Urantia book, this was from Melchizedek's teachings, right? And you wouldn't think that could happen, right? You think those teachings would have died out, right? And sometimes we think when we talk to somebody, oh, they didn't get it, or oh, I didn't communicate well. Well, maybe you didn't communicate well. Okay, we'll be honest. Sometimes we say the wrong thing to a person. And other times we say something to somebody, and maybe they don't have any particular reaction, right? But when you say something and it lodges in somebody's brain, right, it actually changes the wiring of the brain, right? It creates a synaptic connection to that thought, right? And somewhere down the road, a situation will come up and that person will be talking to somebody and that synaptic connection will connect them with that thought, right? That concept. And they'll share it. They'll say, oh, well, you thought about it this way. And then that gets passed on. And that's what I'd call it a spiritual wake that we leave behind us, right? And Melchizedek's wake lasted for centuries and centuries and centuries. And he was just one person talking, right? So when you think about the Urantia movement, and we have lots of readers that are 20, 30, 40, 50-year readers, I think any one of us could leave a wake the size of Melchizedek's if we set our mind to it, right? If we said the type of truthful things to enough people, and those things lodged in their minds, became part of their beingness, right? Part of their philosophy of living, and they were willing to share those with other people, that wake would grow and grow and grow. And you know how when you get waves and they kind of line up with each other, now you get a bigger wave. And that, to me, I like taking complex things and making them simple, right? And this is just a way I look at it to simplify what seems to be this impossible task of enlightening the planet, right? And it's not going to happen overnight, but this is how it happens. You look at anything in the world, I don't care what it is, look at anything, look around you, think about your city, think about the organizations that exist, right? They all began because somebody said something, right? I had a client once, and he was telling me about this guy, and their high school didn't have a track, he said, well, I think we should have a track. And everybody said, well, way too much money, we can't do it. And he said, no, we're gonna have a track. And he would go up to people and he said, Bill, you make a lot of money. I want $1,000 from you. And he'd go to somebody else and say, hey, can you chip in $20 into our thing? And they built an Olympic-sized track around the school. It's only because he said something, right? And we kind of make it difficult for ourselves, saying, well, the world's not ready, the book's too complex. And I don't really think it is. I think the book has very simple concepts. Yeah, you can find some complex ones if you go looking for them, but are you going to share those with your next door neighbor talking across the fence? Probably not. The basic ones, anybody your grandkids can understand, right? Be nice to your neighbor and have faith in the future. There's a lot of things that can be shared easily. So, and yeah, I've part of what I say comes from experience. The last outreach I did was going to the Seattle Hemp Fest, right? And people said, Hemp Fest? You go to Hemp Fest? And I said, well, when I found the book, I was a pot smoking hippie in San Francisco. I met a guy that had the Urantia book, It's like, I think young people smoke pot are probably kind of open-minded. So my goal was to place 500 books in Seattle, and COVID kind of cut that because now they don't have it there. But we got about between 250 and 300 books placed, and then a lot of conversations with young people, right? And I tell you, people are open, people are hungry. If you gauge them in a conversation, they'll let you know what they think and what they're up to, and it's really rewarding to talk to people and tell them about the Urantia book and whatever else. So I've done a lot of expos and different things, right? So I know how to talk to people, but with COVID, everything seemed to shift. Like all of a sudden we're not having live meetings, things aren't, these events aren't happening. And I took a landmark program about a year ago, and you're supposed to take on a project, you get all this coaching so you can succeed, create something in your community. And I didn't really know what to do, but I knew one thing. I said, these guys with the rifles come downtown Coeur d'Alene and they hang out and they pretend like they're protecting us from the Antifa or something, right? And I said, I'd really like to talk to those guys, right? But I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to talk to people that think way different than me. And so I made that my project. I want to learn how to talk to people that don't think like I think, And looking around a bit, I found there were some online groups that actually made conversations with diverse people very simple, very easy. And one of them is called livingroomconversations.org. It's a very good organization. I think April Helen will put things in the chat, so you don't have to write these down if you don't want. They have about 100 topics, right, that they've already created the talking points for, and they have the conversation agreements, and we'll go through that later on. But what I noticed when I started getting in these conversations was that it was so easy to drop Urantia thoughts in. I never mentioned the Urantia book, rarely ever mentioned the Urantia book, because I didn't want to taint my presence in the room with some, I believe in X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter, right? It's just a conversation. And knowing the power of conversation and the power of speaking and how it shifts people and it changes them, sometimes permanently, right? I really felt free to upgrade comments, or people would say something and then my turn to come to speak, and I'd say it. Maybe I'd expand the conversation a bit, make the concept bigger, more, add more truth to it, or more, just have it make more sense. And I was on one conversation. It was really interesting. A guy named Len was the host, and I can't remember what the topic was, and a friend of mine, David Burt, who actually got the Urantia book through HempFest, his wife came up and said, what's this book? What's this book? And so they took one home, and later David was reading it. And so he joined me on the call. So here's two Urantia book readers. We never mentioned the Urantia book, but at the end of the call, there's a little wrap up. Oh, what'd you think? And how did this conversation go? And one guy said, oh my God, I have never taken so many notes. This was so good. And because David and I, we just went back and forth, and we just kept altering the way the conversation was. But it could have turned into just a little chit chat back and forth and reciting what you heard on the news last night or something. But we took it to a whole new level. And then Len posted it on the Facebook site during the conversation, and a couple of people that were there chimed in like, that was the best conversation. And it was really rewarding to see that people are hungry for the concepts. They're not hungry for the Urantia book. They're not hungry for OWASP. They're not hungry for that. They're hungry for the truth, the concepts that are in it. And I really see that, April Helen and Pam Keller Pam Keller is a new general counselor. So the three of us, we work together. We call ourselves the motivators. We're just, we work on creating talking guides and stuff for the conversations, and we get on lots of calls. where was I going with that? So we all get on calls. We all do these calls together, and we're working with the fellowship to create conversations that we can have anybody show up in. It kind of started with, originally I envisioned that there'd be a way that people could come see a link like a Google AdWord. And the fellowship, for example, has 40 grand in free Google AdWords every month they got to use up, or they want to use up. So I said to Gina, who's the main person with the web and outreach, I guess you just call it the website. She's her and other people have started something called Stepping Stones, in which the AdWords send them to this stepping stone site, and the idea is that they'll step from one thing to the next. And I told Gina, I said, man, this stuff's a lot of language. That's a lot of words. It sounds like dry sands of knowledge, or you got to force people through the, I didn't really say it that way, but it felt like, okay, you start here and you go there and you go there, then then we'll give you the prize. And I'm being a little facetious here, but it's really well done and everything. But I said, it'd be nice if there was also an option to have people invited into a conversation. And I told her about Living Room Conversations. I told the Stepping Stones group, and they got very interested. And so a lot of the energy has shifted into setting these conversations up. And our goal was to have our own conversations on the platform that Living Room Conversations uses. This is getting a little complicated, but they actually use a program called Junto, which is the backbone of these conversations. So Gary Tong has created a really nice symbol for us, a nice logo for us. It's a Spiritual Growth Conversations with this beautiful artwork around it. And we're pretty close to launching our first one. The motivators are working on the wording for the conversation guide, right? Which we're pretty close to doing. And we'll show you what a conversation guide looks like a little bit later. So anyway, I'm not following the format I wrote up at all, by the way. I'm kind of ad-libbing it, so I hope you're good with that. People know me too well, right? Thomas follow rules? It's like, no, he doesn't do that. So anyway, if I get off track, April Helen will put me back on. So I've been off track for a long time. So anyway, let me jump ahead in some of my notes here. So if there's any questions, put your hand up and or put it in the chat, and April Helen will bring my attention to it. She's my assistant today, so though she has to drop off for a little bit to lead a worship. I want to talk a little bit about, from the UB perspective, there's so many things in the Urantia book that are stimulating. Like one is the parable of the 10 talents, right? We all know that parable. I don't have to tell it to you, but the thing that really strikes me about it is, of course, the one guy who just hid his talent under a mattress or something, right? And gives it back to the master and says, "Hey, look, I saved this for you. Good job, eh?" And, of course, he got scolded pretty bad, right? And the guy who got, tripled his talents, he got rewarded 3 cities to manage. But it's a great parable for us in this day and age, because we have been given a mighty big talent, right? Man, this is big. This isn't your average run-of-the-mill religion or run-of-the-mill philosophy. Not that philosophies are run-of-the-mill, but it's epic, what we have in our hands. And I've always felt, to be honest, I really felt kind of disappointed in the Urantia movement. I'll be honest with you. And I get disappointed myself too. Don't take it personal. It's like we have so much given to us, but the effort to get it out to the common person is kind of minimal. And I see Alice on the call. Alice, you're doing great work. Thank you. A lot of people are, right? But for the size of the talent we got, we have to ask ourselves every day, everywhere we wake up, how are we doing on investing that talent? We're going to get the reckoning at the end of our life. And I think the comment will be, you got a really big talent. You could have really cashed in on that and really made a lot of mileage on it. So So I guess I just want to leave it at that a lot of this conversation is really about how to take the talent we have, which is the Urantia book, the epical revelations, the teachings of Jesus. We got the fourth and fifth epical revelation in our palms, right, in our minds. So that's what we're going to look at some more. And so investing. So right now, the Urantia community, as I said, has a lot of great stuff going on, right? It's really great to see so many websites popping up and videos and blogs, and it's encouraging, right? And my only caution would be, we got to be careful not to talk too much to ourselves. There's a lot of Urantia heads getting together and Urantiaizing, and I got the last Herald, it was all articles by the usual authors, brilliant people, wonderfully written articles, but I wasn't interested. I said, I've read this stuff for 50 years. I don't want to read it anymore. I want to talk to the people, right? Give me the people. So that's the shift I've made. And I think one reason I've shifted so strongly is that, one way to look at it is, in any other religious type organization, say like a seminary, if we went to the seminary for, say, 3 years, they'd say at the end of 3 years, okay, where do you want to go? You want to be a minister? You want to be a layperson? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? You've been here 3 years. I'm going to kick you out now, right? In the Urantia movement, you get to be a lifer at the seminary, right? You don't really get to go out. I mean, you do if you want, but there's nobody kicks you out. Nobody kicks you out in the street and says, go to work, And I love the story of the Zen master who went to New York City. And everybody said, why would you go to New York City? He says, well, if I can't be a Zen master in New York City, I can't be a Zen master, right? If I can be a Zen master there, I could do it anywhere. So I think that's where we're called, right? Is to, whatever our level is, right? I don't want anybody to try to be like me. I don't say, oh, you should do what I do, or I should do what you do. You all know what you have and what you have to work with and what your time is and what your interests are, right? So, and one demographic, or one statistic I think we should all consider that's shifted, right, is that when I was younger, I think roughly 90% of the people in the country identified as Christian. Something like that, right? 85, 90, I don't remember. That number now, I've been told, is around 35%. That's a big shift, right? And when I was a kid, morality was common, right? People were just moral. People opened the door for ladies and people said please and thank you. And if you're from Minnesota, you can't say excuse me often enough in a day, right? It's like we're so polite, right? But that's part of Christian type education. It's about being raised in a culture where people were taught morals and taught to care for each other, right? And now there's so many people have no church, have no moral training, have no philosophy of living, because the parents, they didn't go to church, they got bored with it. The kids won't go. And I was just talking to somebody about a little spiritual festival happening out in my backyard while we're talking. Talking to a fella, and Christianity came up, and he said, because my daughter won't go to churches. I won't either anymore. She says, she's lesbian, and says she said, why would I go to church to hear about hell and stuff, So anyway, so we know there's a lot of people that just aren't there. Some churches are very loving and very great. I recommend people go if you got that kind of church and you have a good experience, but not everybody has that experience going to church, or maybe other religions. So the other thing, we were told, us Urantians, that the Urantia book was given to us early to prepare teachers for when the world was ready, right? They never said, this is what it'll look like when the world's ready, right? Did they ever say that? They never said it to me. Oh, there'll be unemployment, there'll be major diseases, there'll be disasters happening, and Christianity would be not that strong anymore. They didn't say that. They just said when the world is ready. It's kind of like you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows, right? It's like you don't need it. You just look at the news, look out the window, look out, we got a big fire burning up north of us, right? The world's burning up. So I think the time has come when, another way to say it is, when I first started reading the Urantia book, Christianity was so strong. I was nervous about mentioning the Urantia book to people, and you might relate to that, right? Like, oh no, a cult, and the whole cult thing of the 70s and the movies about cults. And, oh God, it was like, when the 70s came along, it was more self-help spiritual books got sold in the 70s than ever before or since, right? And where was the Urantia book? I went to do a call in Castlegar, Canada at some holistic fair, and I got a call from Chicago. Oh, we hear you're going to this holistic fair to share the Urantia book. We don't want you to go. And I said, why not? He said, well, the press might be there. I said, the press is going to be in Castlegar, BC. Yeah, right. I went and did it, and there's 40 people. I introduced the Urantia book to 40 people. And that was back in the 70s, right? And so we missed our chance, right? More people than ever were buying self-help books, and the Urantia book was nowhere to be seen, right? Maybe in a few bookstores. So now is our second chance, right? This is our second opportunity. The world is lacking spiritual guidance right now. The old systems, a lot of people have already taken a look, said, not for me. So it's almost like there's a spiritual vacuum, right? You can just hear the sucking sound of the vacuum. It's like, where the hell's the truth, And I was talking to somebody else today, and they were saying, the young kid, young teenager, he's saying, yeah, it's just, so I'm really interested in the truth and knowing what's going on, but where do you find out? I said, well, I got a book right here. I just told him about the Urantia book, because he was standing in front of a table that had Urantia books on it. So, people are ready. Let's give up the notion that people aren't ready. And when Christianity had a really strong sway on people, it was different, right? Or other things, right? Or fear of cults or whatever. But those days have really shifted big time. So we're in this decline, China's no longer free, dictators popping up everywhere. The news is controlled by big financial interests. This couldn't be a better time for change, right? Because how does it say it? Somebody help me out. It's crisis goes before disaster, but it also goes before great opportunities, right? It also leads to great opportunities for change. So we're in the disaster mode, but we're also in the opportunity mode. Charles, did you have a question?
Yeah. Okay, this is, I don't know if you were here when I was explaining my situation earlier, but I'll explain it again briefly for those that joined us. I am from Talladega, Alabama, and the South is ultra conservative, especially my particular area. So every time I mention the Urantia book, cult. Or I was at a forum several years ago, and I brought that up. I said, look, how can you mention the Urantia book in such a hostile environment? And they said, Jesus. And I said, I understand that. But in the South, if it is not the Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, usually in the King James Bible, it's a false Jesus. And that is the situation I've run into over and over and over. Every time I mention the Urantia book, it's a false religion, a false gospel, a cult, or indifference. So
Charles, is your question about how to speak to those type of people?
Yes, that is
Okay.
my basic question. How would you speak?
All right.
How would you get people like that interested in, first of all, getting the idea of, as one person put it, I've heard of the Urantia book. I don't care about the Urantia book. I've heard about the Urantia book. It's not the Bible. End of discussion. And so how do you deal with people that deals with that particular mindset?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. We'll get right into that. Okay, thank you. All right, so So I want to say a little bit before I tell you more about, yes, I got a few ideas I want to run by you too. Okay, one is something I call our probable almost certain future. All right, it's a landmark term, I'll admit. It says, so if we humans continue as we are currently doing, right, it's predictable that there'll be disasters, more unrest, less democratic governments, more, more economic upheavals. And you can just fill in the blanks, right? We can see that Western civilization is slowly disintegrating, as it says in the Urantia book, right? And there's only certain forces that can mitigate that disintegration, right? And the teachings of Jesus is one of those. The uplifting truths found in the Urantia book is one of those. You're not going to do it with economics. You're not going to do it with politics. Environment, it's a toss-up. That ain't going to do it. Maybe we'll keep the glaciers from coming down, but maybe we won't. So we're really kind of in a spot where we, the people that have the Urantia book, have, I'd say, an obligation, an opportunity to make a big difference. So, and one story I like, this is kind of pushes this point a little bit. So there's a story about a shoe salesman who's sent off to Africa or somewhere where nobody wears shoes, right? And you think, oh, this will be good. And he gets down there and he's like, but oh my God. So he calls up the office, says, get me out of here. Nobody wears shoes. I can't sell shoes. Nobody wears shoes, And so they pull him out and they send another salesman down. And he looks around and he calls up the office. What do you think he says? Send me all the shoes you got. Nobody wears shoes. This is a gold mine. Send me shoes. I need more shoes, right? So the situation is the same in both scenarios, right? But one person sees an opportunity where other doesn't see an opportunity, right? So we're kind of at that place, if you consider ourselves truth dealers, right? We're the truth salesman of the shoe. We're not the shoe salesman, we're the truth salesman. We have a market that commonly your Urantia book readers will see it as, God, nobody's interested. This big book is such a headache. Who the heck wants to read that big book, right? I can't hardly give them away, right? That's the first salesman, right? The second salesman, who I hope we all are, says, oh my God, the world has never been riper for truth. My God, I can't handle it all. I got so much business and opportunity I can never get to it in my lifetime. That's how I choose to see it, because it's the truth, right? The other is it's an easy way to kind of make an excuse or make an assumption or something, but what's that, what's an assumption get us? We all know what assumptions get you. So yeah, and people aren't looking for a big book with big terms, hard to understand, long read. Check. No, I'm not interested in that, right? You're not going to find too many avid readers now who are looking for spiritual books. There's less avid readers than there was 50 years ago. And people can digest their information in smaller bites. They don't want to read the big novels. They'll read a paperback or something maybe. So this is kind of where we're at today in our world, right? This is the stage that we're stepping onto, or we're dancing on, right? And if if I was a Hafiz poetry, I'd say, look at the floor we're dancing on, right? It's just jeweled and gorgeous and beautiful, and it's just inviting us to play on it, right? To dance on it. And but the dance we're doing is with humanity, right? It's a dance. We're basically, we have the music of the spheres, the music of Jesus in our ears, the truth of the Urantia book echoing through us, and all these people to dance with, right? It's like, would you like to dance? Would you like to dance? And so a conversation is really like a dance, right? People say this, people say that, people say this, and it's a beautiful experience. And we've all been in great conversations, right? So before I get into some of the other stuff around actually doing these conversations, let me give you Couple more. I don't know why I like these little analogies. So like in the 70s, I remember you could buy Seagram's whiskey for $7, right? I was just kind of thinking about alcohol at $7. You know? Well, the sales were okay, but not great. And so they didn't change anything. They didn't change the packaging. They just raised the price $2. Now it's $9, right? What happened? Did sales fall off? They went up, way up. People want to buy better whiskey. Well, $9 whiskey is a hell of a lot better than $7 whiskey, right? And so sales went up. But what that teaches you is that if you repackage something or change the way it's perceived, it actually becomes something that's desirable. We have something that's really desirable, but the way we deliver it, the way we package it, the way we promote it is, I guess it's mostly good for Urantia heads. Is that a fair way to say it? Most of what I see on the internet appeals to people that already read the book, right? A lot of it is going now for outreach and to find other people, which I really appreciate it. But there's a lot that, you know, I used to love somebody post a quote on Facebook or something. Now it's like, oh no, not another quote. Oh, I've read that quote 600 times, right? I'd rather see that energy put into maybe finding somebody who'd really enjoy that quote. But so I mean, I have a choice. I don't have to listen to the quote, but read it. But so let's jump ahead. So we talked about Melchizedek and his power and how words really make a difference. Anybody else have questions before we go on? Not, that's good. I don't care. So since let me say this. So if we get into, I didn't really want to bury you in Urantia book quotes today, right? But there's a few that I think are good. One is knowledge is possessed only by sharing. I think it's a moda, right? Knowledge is possessed only by sharing. And it says that a couple different ways in the Urantia book, but that really struck me, right? It's like you don't really possess a truth until you can share it with somebody else, right? And I have this kind of crazy, I told you I like things simple, simplify it for me, please, you know? And so I look at it, people, if we're all on a level from say 0 to 100, like the smartest, brightest, enlightened person's 100 and the knucklehead's at 1, and say I'm a 50, right? And I meet a 48, hey buddy, what's going on, you know? I was like, oh man, I could use a little help. And so I bestow some help on him, right? I take some of my 50 and I hand it over to him, right? And he bumps himself on up to a 50, right? Let's just say, for simplicity. And then I'm looking up at a 52, like, ooh, wow, what do you got that I don't have, right? And then I listen to the 52 or I hang around with him. I start to notice some things. I start to adjust. And then, but what happened between me and the 48? One way I got up to a 52 was helping the 48, right? I didn't really own 50. I couldn't have got to the 52 until I helped the 48. That's how I look at it, right? You don't really, you could recite the Urantia book word for word, beginning to end, without looking at it, right? And it wouldn't mean, it'd still be a big blank 0 in the universe, right? Good job memorizing. But as soon as you bestow that on other people, ka-ching, 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 right? Now you're actually growing in grace and love and, you're moving up the scale from 1 to 100, right? So this is how maybe it's a lazy way to look at it, but these things really help me to understand. They're simple concepts constructs that I use just to kind of, how am I doing? Have I helped any 48s today? You know, there's one over there. Okay, opportunity. And there's a 58. Oh my God, a 58. I'm gonna have to suck up to this person. What do you do when you meet a 58? I don't know. I don't know what to do. So listen, I guess, listen intently and observe. So, and Rodin said, if man becomes so ingenious that he more rapidly adds to the complexities of society. The art of living will need to be remastered in less time, perhaps every generation. So the art of living is a lot. It's language, culture, nuances of living. And so to remaster the art of living, we also have to remaster the art of speaking, right? And you think about the Urantia book, 1934, college level language, not spoken by too many people. I think when I went to school back in the 50s, Minnesota, we got some pretty good English. It wasn't college level, but it was, we had good English teachers. And I think it's a little different from the language that's spoken now. And I think the language in our country has been dumbed down a bit, if I can say it that way, because of, I don't know, I'll pick on any particular thing, maybe video games, maybe movies, maybe Facebook sites, maybe all kinds of nonsense that goes on, right? So there's a lot of influences, right? But again, I don't want to drive this point home too much, but if we don't remaster the Urantia book into a more common language, right? Secular language, the language of the realm, the language of the common person, we're not going to reach them. Just give it up. We're not going to do that, right? So we have to get to the level that other people are at. I'm not going to speak 50 to a 30 to a 48, right? I got to speak at the 48's level, get them to understand the concept, and then they'll like, oh, God, I got that. I think I got that. So hopefully that makes sense. Another quote I like is, no cult can survive unless it embodies some masterful mystery and conceals some worthful unattainable. One of my favorite quotes. No cultural group, including us, can survive if we don't have something that pulls us forward, right? Landmark, they call it inventing a future to live into. I really love the way they say that. Inventing a future that pulls you towards it, right? And I think the Urantia movement has that work to do yet, right? Like, what future are we pulling towards us, right? What is that? Say it. Can anybody say it, right? Not so well. A lot of us will say light and life. Oh, we're working towards light and life. Well, that is a masterful mystery. We don't know exactly what it looks like, and it is a worthful unattainable. And there's probably minor steps on the way that we could actually say, let's get here first, and then we'll get there next, and then we'll eventually get to light and life. Phil, what's your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about the same thing when you said we need a new symbol, or it's part of the same conversation or the same track. And so I was going to ask you, what do you think that is? What would be the symbol? As far as, I've also thought about your question about what's that masterful secret.
Oh, mystery.
Mystery. And it would seem to me, they call the mystery monitors. Maybe that's the mystery that we should be presenting. And it's also the focus of the kingdom of God, So maybe we should start to be a little quicker to get to the heart of the matter, speak directly to the person's inner spirit. Don't talk intellectually, don't talk, just emotionally. Don't try to, intellect browbeat them with fear or anything else. Hit them with a message about that is that mystery. You have a spirit from the very first person that's yours alone. Something that's going to get their attention.
That's absolutely true.
Daryl has a question.
Yeah.
Hi guys. I just wanted to say I think it should hinge around the spirit of truth. And we're living in a world right now where lies and deception are so prominent. I think the simplest way for me that I do it is just by hinging everything right around the spirit of truth, and not telling them what the spirit of truth is, but just making people understand that the spirit of truth is within their heart and that they'll have the answer if they ask within themselves for it. I think that's a great idea. But Thomas, I like your lead.
Thank you. Well, yeah, thank you both those comments. It had me thinking about where it says that every dark crossroad in the forward struggle, the spirit of truth will always speak, saying, this is the way. So when we talk to people, we don't have to have it figured out. We don't have to have something rehearsed. You know, I go into these conversations we have. I don't do any prep work. I just show up, right? We're just sitting around having a conversation. And the right thing, I guess I just have enough ideas in my head that when somebody says something, I know how to add to that. Diane?
Thomas, wonder if you could do a quick little demonstration of an encounter you might have.
Yeah, we're actually I'm gonna switch us over to the living room screen. Is that okay? The living room conversation screen. I can just kind of walk you through how we do it. Would that be okay?
Okay.
All right. So just a couple other thoughts. One,
Do you want to share your screen? Is that it?
in a little bit. I
Okay.
want to show you how to use living room conversations. It's real easy. I thought if I screen shared, you could see how to use it. Would that be okay?
Hey, Uncle Thomas,
Yes.
before I'm going to head off to lead this virtual summer study session worship, but I hope to be back in about 15 or 20 minutes.
All
I
right.
did want to just make one remark real quick to Brother Charles and his question that he posed. And what came up for me is what Jesus did in an immediate evaluation of meeting. And I think it was Daryl who just said it in another word, of meeting the people where they're at in that moment, being able to quickly read vibe, frequency, mental placement, mental capacity, and quickly orientate yourself to that person's availability.
Yes, yeah.
More to come.
In order to do that, I have begun a very intensive Bible study, because since the Bible is the book that everyone respects around here, I need to know the Bible better than they do, basically. So for the past 3 years, I've been engaged in like 2 hours a day, like really intense Bible study. And that's helped me deal with people a lot.
That's good to know. Yeah, if you know the people that you're speaking to, you understand their background, that really helps. And raised Christian, I can relate to Christians pretty well.
Yeah.
And as Diane said at the beginning, the listening is really an important skill. It's not just, in one of the landmark courses I took, they made us listen so much. It was just like, why are they doing this, right? So you have to repeat something, and it was either a pass or not pass, right? I thought, oh, I didn't pass again. I must not have listened very well. But once you could really listen to people, all of a sudden I noticed I could understand what they were saying. Before, I didn't really hear them. I just kind of went, okay, what am I going to say now? But then I really got in their space, right? I just fully got them, right? Like, oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah. And then I could actually communicate with them directly to what they were saying, not what I wanted to say that was kind of sounded something like what they were saying, right?
Well, it's as if I know a lot of Urantia book readers, in my study group especially, that they're like, I don't need to study the Bible. I have the Urantia book. Well, that's good to a point. But this is piggybacking on to what you were just saying. You have to know the background of the people you're dealing with.
That's true, Charles. Thank you. So let me see if I covered everything I want to cover here. So let me.
Maybe you need a foil, somebody who can be your.
I'll volunteer if you want.
Supposed. Well, We need somebody who's not too hard at it. You might be too hard at it. Somebody who's, you know. Anyway, who would like to volunteer? Charles, you want to volunteer as being the person who's gonna say, I don't need it?
Right. I'm going to basically be the person that is the typical example that you would find in the South. And I figure if you could handle this, then you can basically handle anything, assuming you'll be open
a
to
little
that.
easier though.
Assuming, Tom, you'll be open to that.
Well, Charles, based on what you already said, I could probably respond to you, okay?
Okay.
Well, say you're the person that you're talking about. I'd say, well, hey, Charles, wow, I'm pretty touched by the depth of your faith. I mean, I wish I had that much faith, right?
Mhm.
That's cool. I don't know where you get that from, but man, keep getting it. Yes, this is like good stuff. And maybe sometime we can talk a bit more about your love of Jesus and this kind of thing, because I'm really into Jesus too. You know, I think Jesus, God, he's my best buddy. He's my he's my fan. So I think we got something in common. So let's just continue this conversation when we get a chance, okay?
Mhm.
And that's what I'd say, just for
Well,
example.
that was great. That was wonderful. You affirmed that their goodness.
Mhm. Yeah, that's all Jesus would do. He'd see the goodness in them and then maybe make a suggestion.
What's your response, Charles, to that? If you're
My response in the South, especially if I knew that you were a Urantia book reader.
no, there's no Urantia book. It's just
I know. Okay. My response would be something like, okay, well, I'd basically get my Bible out and start flipping through the Gospels with you. That'd be the basic response to that scenario.
Sounds fair. Let's get the Bibles out. Sounds good. Ed, can we read about Jesus? He's my favorite, you know.
Exactly. And
All right.
unfortunately, in the South, 9 times out of 10, you'll start out with Paul.
Paul, who's he? Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, let me. We'll go ahead and get into a living room conversation here in a minute. So what I will do. Let's hope April Helen would be here when we do that. Let me talk about a couple more things. We'll get April Helen back because she's one of my buddies in the living room conversations, and we can.
Can I say something, my friend, just before you
Yes.
continue?
Sure.
You mentioned when you whip the Bibles out. I was going to say, that's a good time to remind people that, the Bible has a cumulative total of 17 pages on Jesus. And if you've already introduced the Urantia papers, we all know how many hundreds of pages that has.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So one thing to consider, though, is that if you can expand any belief, it's a victory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're reading the Bible with somebody, you read a couple lines of what Jesus said in the Bible, a lot of times you can actually expand it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to say, oh, I'm going to expand this now. You just say it. Yeah, the way I get that is, and you say it, right? And people kind of, huh? Oh, I never noticed that in that line, but yeah, it's good. Yeah, great. So it doesn't really, I don't think it matters too much as long as you're with the person in their space, right? Listening to what their needs are and what level they're at and what might help them grow. And again, if you're helping a 48, what do you got to lose,
Well, I'm pretty bad about, and I don't attribute this, but I'm pretty bad about giving Urantia book quotes in Sunday school. Like someone will mention something and I go, well, what about this? And it'll be almost word for word from the Urantia book.
Well,
But,
Charles, I would really suggest that you refrain from mentioning the Urantia book in the Deep South. There's really no reason to, right?
Yeah, well, I don't mention it, but I draw from it.
Right, that's fine. And just restate it in a way that makes more sense to people. Use their language, their way of speaking. So
Yeah.
it'll work better. So anybody else have any questions?
I was going to mention, this is Andrea. I was going to mention that, the idea that you only need the Urantia book because it's, a superior source of knowledge compared to the Bible is really is really not very accurate, because remember what the revelators were, their mandate required that they couldn't give us any unearned knowledge. And so if you look at a lot of the stories that are in the Urantia book, in the Jesus section, you'll see that they don't repeat some of the things that are in the Bible, because they know we have access to that knowledge, and they expect us to go there and read those stories.
Yeah.
because they want to fill in the blanks for us. And so it's a real art if you can know those Bible stories backwards and forwards, and then embellish them in a way without mentioning the Urantia book or turning anybody off. But that requires a lot of practice and a lot of knowledge of both the Urantia book and the Bible, but they should dovetail with each other. Then the other thing I wanted to mention about like trying to meet people where they're at, sometimes a simple question, like Thomas and I have worked many times at booths together where we're introducing people to the book. And I made a mistake one day of telling this woman, I'll never forget, I think we were up in Idaho or somewhere. And I said to her, this book really brings the Bible to life. And she looked at me and she gave me the dirtiest look. She said, honey, the Bible's already to life. And she stomped off. And so I learned my lesson, and I thought, how dare I, stomp on somebody's faith and their love of the Bible. That's just not appropriate. And I learned quickly to find out where they are coming from, to speak to them and give them food that's made for them, right? And so I always just ask people, so what are you into? And then let them talk, and then just see if you can gently fill in a blank or two. I mean, you don't need to bowl them over with, hey, let me bang you up the side of the head with this giant book.
Let me literally throw the book at you.
Right.
Well, there's, speaking of knowing your knowing your Bible and other faiths, there is a quote about Buddhism somewhere in part 3, where it made a comment about if Buddha had only listened to this one particular person, I can't remember who it was, then things would have gone smoother for him. And then it drops out, and then it drops it. So that's an example of, you really, when you get to that section, you need to do research on that. What did this person tell Buddha?
That's true.
Yeah.
So I keep hearing the listening thing, right? And let me try to explain something. It's it's how I understand listening. It's like when you listen to somebody like this idiot, oh my God, I'll be nice and listen to them, right? They feel that 100%. They're afraid to really communicate what they had to say. They're not going to bare their soul. They could just feel this person's not listening, right? But when you listen big, right? Like Jesus listened to people because he knew they're going to be in paradise someday, right? He had a big listening to people, right? And people just opened up, and they just, inside of that listening, to those he taught the most, he said the least, right? Because of the space that he gave them to be themselves. And when you're given that much space, a lot of people aren't really given space. Oh, I know the way that person is. I know the way that person is. Oh, well, watch out for that guy. We don't give people space. We give people our judgments, our assessments, and our guarded optimism about, what are they going to do this time, right? And I find it's good to practice when you meet somebody really obnoxious. Say, this is my opportunity. This is a good one. You just give them as much space as you give them, right? And usually it turns out to be a great interaction, like nothing like you would have expected, right? And so it really becomes that we are our brother's keeper, right? That's literally a way to express that, right? Give people so much space, they can only show up one way, which is wonderful, right? And I love people when I see them do that for each other, right? With somebody. And we all heard stories or seen examples of somebody where just like, oh, no, not that person. And then somebody walks up to him and just turns him into the hero of the day, right? And I heard Werner Erhard do that on tape once. He was, it's just a recording, but But all these people were kind of getting up to the mic and asking questions. He interacted with them. This one girl got up and she blathered on and on. And oh my God, I thought, oh my God, he's going to cut her off at the knees. You know, this gal's a mess. When he spoke to her, he said, wow, you have been the greatest contribution to this conversation. Thank you so much, right? He turned her into an angel. Like, how in the hell do you turn, you know what I mean? But he had such a big listening. He didn't so much hear what she was saying. He heard her intent and her desire to contribute, right? And I think she was probably speaking for other people in the room, and she was having a hard time saying it really well, but it was a huge contribution. And I thought, man, if I could listen to people like that, wow, I'd have a lot more friends and, you know, be a different world. So listening is really 80% of contributing to people. So I want to say a couple more things. So one quote is, no cult can survive if it retards moral growth and fails to foster spiritual progress. So the question is, does the Urantia movement, as it's known, retard moral growth? And does it fail to foster spiritual progress? I don't know. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I don't think it retards moral growth. I think it could always do more, right, to foster spiritual progress. So I guess that's why I've kind of been a person that likes to try new things, invent new ways to do things. And I've taken a lot of flack sometimes for it, but I'm always interested in what's next. You know, Andrea and I did the Cosmic Roadshow. People said, what? You're doing a Cosmic Roadshow? We had like 75 books, right? We traveled around from Montreal conference down to Chicago summer study, handing out books. We all just pile out of the van, right? Okay, you go that way, you go that way. We'll get back in an hour, right? And we come back, we'd all have these stories. Oh my God, I met this person. Oh, you know, we had a great time. It was fun. It was really
Yes, we did.
It was a cosmic adventure. So we're going to do it again, Andrea. Come on, let's do it again.
I'm ready.
I got a van. We're ready to go. So anyway, so creating ways to do this is part of it, and that's where I think it's really good for like societies that are pretty unified. They can come together. Groups, study groups can even do it, or find some people and say, hey, what could we do in our community to foster spiritual progress? You know, let's find it. And if your community's not receptive, then go on the internet highway, right? Step out. One of my favorite quotes is, when a great truth seeker and a great truth giver meet, the result is a liberating enlightenment born of the experience of new truth. Born of the experience of new truth, right? And I tell you, I've had so many experiences, like I say, where I would drop a slightly different perspective into a conversation, and you could just see it. And this 5.5 years, 250 Cosmic Cafe meetings we had in Coeur d'Alene, never once did I leave the meeting not noticing people had a lighter step and they seemed like they were more alive and illuminated, right? They come in kind of whatever, and they walk out like, yeah, what a great conversation, right? Because it's that liberating enlightenment born of experience of new truth, right? People, it's almost like water for a dry plant, right? I mean, truth is like what sustains us, has us grow.
Thomas, could you describe the meetings that you're talking about? How did they flow?
Well, Cosmic Cafe was, we'd find a coffee shop or someplace, had a quiet space we could meet. We'd print flyers and we'd have all kinds of various topics. And some were just kind of cornball titles, but we didn't care. We just wanted to have some kind of starting point. We kind of top out about 20 for quite a few years, and it kind of got down to around 10, but we'd always have great conversations. Anybody could speak. We didn't use the talking stick or any of that. I wasn't really against that. Aurora and I would be moderators, right? I'd look for people that weren't speaking, because there'd always be a couple of people that would kind of, before you finish your last word, they'd be talking. And, so I had to kind of watch for people that wanted to share. And I'd say, oh, hey, Bill, you haven't said anything. What are your thoughts on this? You know, and so I'd pull people in so everybody got a chance to converse. And,
Hey,
and
Thomas, one of the
yeah.
things you might mention is you said that you would choose a topic. Do you remember any of them? And one more thing, if you guys want information about this that he's talking about, you can go to urantiabook.com/outreach. And then you'll see that the Cosmic, what was it called? The Cosmic Cafe, that some of his posters are there. I mean, they did a really cool thing. I mean, I just think that that was a terrific idea. And you guys didn't bring up the Urantia book, really, did you?
Occasionally, we didn't focus on it, but it was.
No, that wasn't that wasn't their aim. You know, they didn't have the goal of let's see how many people we can get to read the Urantia book or buy the Urantia book.
No, it's just to have a conversation. One title I remember was "My Karma Ran Over My Dogma." I like that one.
What? Say that again.
My karma ran over my dogma. Anyway, it's an old saying. We always tried to have fun with it. They were light conversations. They weren't meant to be heavy, you know, in that sense. And people brought all kinds of ideas, and it was great. And we had one guy, Jeff, who, you know, I always think, God, I wish a Christian would join us. Wouldn't it be great if we had a Christian? We didn't have any Christians, you know, but this guy, Jeff, came for years. And finally, he's moving to Arizona. And at the last meeting, I said, and by then, towards the end, I figured out he was a Christian, you know, he's coming to our meetings. That was cool. And I said, well, hey, you know, you've been coming all these years. Like, what's your takeaway? He says, he said, the concept of the thought adjuster. He said, I've never learned that in Christianity. And that is so cool to know that I have an indwelling adjuster, you know, I can communicate directly with God through that adjuster. So, ka-ching, I turned a Christian onto the thought adjuster. But he was a great participant in all our conversations. So you never know quite who's going to show up. It's just anybody's welcome. So. And all people are hungry for truth. So,
can I say something?
Yes.
Thank you. You know, it's great at meetings, you know, and Bible study, and you know, and all that stuff of sharing and what you're talking about. But you know, there's a bigger thing, and that is the way Jesus did it, and that is as you pass by.
Right.
And the real opportunity of sharing the Urantia book is in your real life, when you least expect it, as you pass by, because you have to remember that the person you're passing by is also indwelt by God. And if there is something that occurs that causes an interplay between you and that other person, guess what? God is involved. True. And that is a time when one can truly handle it as the opportunity presents itself. And now it's different every time, and it's, you know, you must be faith-filled, and, you know, you have to let go and let God. But I'll tell you, you know, it has worked thousands of times for me. And, you know, and it's in real life. And so, I'd like to mention that and ask, you know, if you do real life sharing as well.
Yeah, I've always liked the concept of as you pass by. It's not over there somewhere else. It's always right here. Whoever you're with 24 hours a day, it's like there is no time that you can't make a difference for somebody or improve the way you react to a situation, or don't get to practice your spiritual skills, if you will. It's always there. So yeah. And you know, the world is full of quandaries, you know, to me. It's like you could never truly have justice. You could never treat people truly fairly, you know. I see a poor person. Should I give them a whole bunch of my money? I don't know. I don't. I might give them $20. So what's really fair? You know, maybe somebody else would give them, here, come live at my house. Bring your friends, you know, but I don't do that. And I can't sort out what's the right thing to do. You know, I do my best to help people, but it's a quandary. And so as you pass by, it's like, how much difference can I make in this situation with the time I have, with the skills I have, and with the needs this person has, and we each have to make that decision in the moment.
And I would like to suggest that at that moment, that is when this thing that's in us called a thought adjuster is at work. And that means, what thought do you have while you're with that person? And do you have the faith to go with it? And I'll tell you, many times it's shocking. If you have a shocking thought, no matter what thought you have, if you go with it, guess what? Interplay happens. A true connection happens. That's what a thought adjuster has. If you remember, the other person also has that. Now, sometimes it can blow up, but I'm saying it takes faith. And many times, amazing things happen when a person has faith and allows the thought, the stream of flow, to go as you pass by, when you realize you're about to have social intercourse with another human being.
Can you relate one of those instances, Bob? You said you've done it 1,000 times. You must have one or two good ones in your mind. Rather than talking about it, can you relate one?
Well, I've had many different kinds. One time I was in Texas and I was at a hotel and I had parked out in front, and instead of in the hotel, we had checked in late at night. So I went down to move my car, and this Army guy came over to me. And I knew he was going to hit me up for money. And he did. And he needed $69. He was going to the Middle East that day. He had to pay his thing, or he would. And so, I felt, I wasn't sure whether it was a con job or not. Anyway, we started talking about things, and I brought up things, and I asked him if he liked to read, and I kind of took that away from money, and we began talking, and I said, at a time like this, perhaps you need some spiritual input. And I said, I'll tell you what, if you'll read 20 pages, I'll give you $20 and this book. And he said, okay. So I put $100 bill at the 18th page without telling him. I gave him the Urantia book at $20. And this is after we had about a half an hour of real rapport. And I sent him on his way. Now, if he kept his agreement, then he, not only had the Urantia book, but he had $100. If he didn't, then someone in some used bookstore that he hawked it at, may find it someday. That's a unique situation. There's been many, but, I handle it as it comes, and I try to let go and let God. And that means just what it does. I mean, I've had many strange conversations, and I've also met people later and found that some took to the Urantia book and some didn't. It just depends. But I'll tell you, Jesus' teachings of as you pass by really works. If you can let go and let God, because it's not going to be a hello, how are you? Good day. Something that comes up, if you go with it, then there's a response, and suddenly there's a pause, and suddenly there's a real communication, and time freezes and two human beings communicate. It's happened many, many times to me. And, I can't think of one, but my wife could tell you, she's there many times.
I love that. That's wonderful, Bob. Hey, I got to give you a little ribbing though. You only gave him $100 for getting through the forward.
It wasn't the forward, Andrea. It wasn't the forward. I put it in the life of Jesus. What I like to do is, when I share a Urantia book, is get someone to read a few pages about Jesus, because that's all it takes for them to fall in love with Jesus.
Yeah, that's great. I was kind of hoping you put that $100 somewhere where he had the chance to get through it. That forward is
I did. I marked the page.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I marked the page. I think it was at 1381, where the two crucial years.
Oh, cool.
He was having a little problem in his life. I felt that was a good place for him to start. And I put it, he promised me 20 pages. I put it in about page 18, between 17 and 18 there. And, I don't know.
That's a great story. Great story.
Well, I hope he kept his agreement. He had $20 to go to a coffee shop and then read, but I don't know. Anyway, But that's just one. There have been many unique ones. Nothing comes up. I'm sorry. I usually don't talk about it. But, you know, we all love the Urantia book. And it's just so important as you pass by. Many times I completely forget about it. And I find that I'm with someone and all of a sudden, oh, I haven't even, you know, and suddenly it will get to that. But as we pass by is so, so important. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you,
that was
Bob.
great, Bob. I wanted to say, I hope that you'll stay after. We have a virtual dinner time that starts at 5 o'clock. And anyone who wants to stay and tell more stories, we'd love to hear them. They're very, very instructional to hear actual personal stories. So
So I think we got April Helen back. So maybe we can jump into actually go to living room conversations. April, you back? Thought I saw, there you are. All right, I'm gonna see if I can do screen share here. Am I permitted? Yes, screen share. Okay, let me make sure I've got this open. Right now we're on my desktop and we'll see if I can get, so here's the logo. It's kind of the proof for the spiritual growth conversations that we're going to be using. Gary,
may I interject where that will be in regards to the fellowship?
Yes, please do.
So, as Uncle Thomas mentioned, that the Stepping Stones project of the Web Content Committee through the fellowship is specifically designed to have conversations without mentioning the Urantia book. And realizing through Google Analytics that people didn't stay on the site very long. So the Stepping Stones is a destination for the Google ads to direct towards the fellowship site in a hidden area where we don't mention the book and we speak about values and all of the concepts and spiritual growth conversations. Then you can click on any page that you're on throughout your decision-making process of how much you want to read, and instead of just reading, actually get into a conversation, and it will direct you to what he's putting up right now is where we got this idea. So living room conversations, and this is the one that you can go and set up over 100 topics. And it's really exciting to have it as a practice ground. And now where we're going with spiritual growth conversations. And I'm just going to put a plug for spiritual growth conversations as we desire to have more hosts and honoring this idea, if you ever choose to not speak about the Urantia book and just experiment greatly in your articulation in that process. I think I said it all. Thank you.
Thank you, April Helen. So as you see, if you go to livingroomconversations.org, you will you can click on join or host a conversation.
If you go to chat.
Pardon?
Put the website.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, April will do that. Thank you.
Be able to copy it.
So you get two choices when you wind up there: join or host a conversation, join our community. I think that's our Facebook community, and I'm the moderator, so I'll be approving you if you do join that. So if you click on join or host, you'll wind up here and like join a conversation. It'll always take you down to here, which is the Junto platform. And when you're on the left-hand side over here, join a volunteer, a staff or volunteer-led conversation. These are like the training, like how to host a conversation about race, introduction to living room conversations, hosting best practices, and how to organize or host a living room conversation. So those are, I'll get that sidebar on there. So those are that. And if you go to upcoming conversation, like just click over here on Junto, it'll put you in a space where now you're Can't get rid of that sidebar. Okay, it's all right. You can start a conversation, or if you click up here, you can see upcoming conversations, right? So I'm going to go to upcoming conversations first, okay? So I click on that. Now, these are conversations that are already scheduled, right? Somebody has scheduled one. Here's Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific on social identity. Here's one on stewardship of spirituality. Somebody named April Helen is putting up. Let's click on it and see what's going on with that. Oh, here's Jamie, Brandon Cooper, Jackie, and Cliffy K have all signed up to be in that conversation, right? And there's 4 spots left. And so, and if you wanted to reserve a spot, you just go to reserve a spot. Look at the time, 5 p.m., the 29th. Oh yeah, I can do that. Go click it, and then your name shows up there, right? And now you've got a spot. They will send you a notice. You can pop it in your Google Calendar or whatever with a link in it. And if nothing else, you just go back here 30 minutes before, 15 minutes before, this will say join conversation, right? Or it says reserve a spot. So you can always just click on that when the time comes. And then if you say you want to browse topics, like, oh, what else is out here? Like, here's a list of many, they've got about 100 topics, right? And they're broken up by politics, culture, American dream, health and wellness, faith and community, environment, our family and community, faith, media, education, justice, and most any of these. War and peace, can we contribute to the conversation about war and peace? Yeah. The environment, yeah. Faith, yeah. Family, yeah. You know, all these things, American dream, yeah. What's ideal culture look like, right? Culture and society, politics, yeah. You know, so any of these, and these here are like their featured ones. They kind of like, okay, we're kind of focusing on these because they're kind of current, right? But say, let's go to faith. You know, you can look coronavirus and religious liberty, faith, community, a way forward, faith and politics, faith and politics and faith, community, race, there's stewardship of spirituality. You know, so there's different, depending what you want to talk about, right? There's always going to be American creed, freedom. I just posted one on freedom, and had a guy from India got up at 3 a.m. because he was interested in freedom, because they're losing it over there like we are here. So, and so any of these topics, really, I used to think, oh, I just want the good topics, right? But any topic I've gotten on, and guess what the next one I'm going to lead is on? Abortion. Do I know anything about abortion? No, but I'm interested in the topic, right? It's a challenging topic, and I want to hear what people say about it, right? I want to know what's going on out there. So anyway, so say we pick a topic, like freedom, let's just say. Okay, so before you ever click on, yeah, I want to do it, or I want to host it. If you wanted to host it, you just hit create event. Now you are the host, and you can make it private or public. If it's public, it's going to show up in that list, right, of all the conversations that are available. And you can, if the time and everything works out for you, you can click on it. And so you basically set up the date and time. How many participants do you want? You know, oh, let's have 38. No, that's really too many. I usually say 7 or 8 is probably about right, because a couple might not show up. And so you want like 5 to 7 people ideally. So, and it lets you look at the opening paragraph, right? So here's how I want to do it today. So I want us to like go through this, but only, instead of everybody contributing it, I'll just have one person read one part, right? So you kind of get to feel how it goes. So who would like to read? And I can't see very many of you, so just speak up. My screen's kind of compressed, so I can't see everybody's face. Who wants to read what the topic is about? Freedom.
Hey, can we read stewardship of spirituality?
We can do that one if you like, since that's coming up for you.
Would you mind?
I don't care. You got to get back to faith. Yeah, that is a good one to pick. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do stewardship of spirituality. Who would like to read the opening statement about what the conversation's about? Don't be shy.
Well,
Phil, you want to read it?
Stewardship of spirituality. Stewardship is the practice of caring for all that God has given us. Our sense of stewardship is usually directed toward the environment and nature, finances, health, property, information resources that enhance our lives and may seem finite and at risk of scarcity. What would happen if we cared for our spiritual gifts with the same attention we give to these other aspects of our lives? How much of our lives might our lives be enhanced? How might our lives be changed?
Yes. Thank you, Phil. Who would like to, let's do an introduction. We'll just do one person or two. Okay, so each participant now has about a minute to introduce themselves. So please just share your name, where you live, what drew you here, and is this your first conversation? Who'd like to go first? Diane, would you like to go first?
You caught me eating some nuts. Got
Oh,
hungry.
well.
All right. What is it that?
Oh, if you could just share your name, where you live, what drew you here, and is this your first conversation?
Okay, first conversation. I'm Diane Bishop, and I'm from Los Angeles, and I'm curious to know about this wonderfully valuable website here, and what conversations I can get into that are maybe don't take forever, but I have time. Say have 20 minutes or so. Can that work?
Well, they usually go an hour to an hour and a half, depending how
Oh.
it's set up.
Well,
Yes.
okay, then that means I would need to.
Well, we're not going to do the whole hour and a half today. No.
Okay, well, all right. I have an hour and a half, but let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just kind of mocking this. So, all right. Well, thank you. Okay, now we've heard from everybody where they're from. Which, by the way, the reason they do this is everybody gets kind of familiar. We get to know who's in the room. Oh, they're from Tennessee. Oh, you're from New York City. Oh, you're from Los Angeles. Oh, great. You kind of you get comfortable with the people in the room, right? All right, so there's conversation agreements. Who would, we'll take turns reading them. Who would like to read the first one? I can't see any names here. So April, maybe you can call somebody if you can see more people than I can.
Hey, yeah, Mr. Charles, you feel like reading our conversation agreement number 1?
No, I don't think so, because I can't read print, so that takes a minute.
Oh,
Well, there you go. I'll read it. So I will say this, that spiritual growth conversations, as we're building our site, we're taking a lot from the work that Living Room Conversations has completed over the last few years. Yet we have created our own conversation agreements that are much shorter than this, but they sound something like this. I'll just quickly read through the first little words. Be curious and listen and to understand. Miss Diane, thank you for that earlier. Show respect and suspend judgment. Note any common ground as well as differences. Thank you, Jesus. Be authentic and welcome that from others. Be purposeful and to the point. Own and guide the conversation. Take personal responsibility for the quality of participation in the conversation as a whole. Back to you, host.
Thank you, April Helen. That was great. Thank you, everybody, for reading one of those. And normally, each person would read one. All right.
Quick question, though. What was the name of this website again?
livingroomconversations.org.
Yeah, I'll see if it's screen reader friendly before this day's over.
All right, good.
Should be in the chat.
So now we'll want to learn just a little bit about each other. So each participant can take 1 to 2 minutes to answer one of the following. What are your hopes and concerns for your family, community, and or the country? What would your best friends say about you? This could be good. And what sense of purpose, mission, or duty guides you in your life? So just take a minute or two and just answer either one, or if you can fit it in 1 or 2 minutes, answer all three. We don't care either way.
I'll take that last one if you wouldn't mind.
Well, thank you.
Okay, just to make sure I get it, would you reread that last question?
What sense of purpose, rather, mission, and duty guides you in your life?
All right. The sense of purpose would be, well, it would be, the sense of purpose would be sharing God's love. My duty, as I see it, is spreading the teachings of the Urantia book as much as I can, with or without mentioning the text, depending on the situation, because I view that as the text claims a fifth epical revelation. And so I view myself as sort of a Urantia book missionary, as it were.
All right.
Did that answer it, or
That does. Thank you. It gives us a good sense of who you are. Thank you, Charles.
I can answer that.
Oh, thank you, Diane. Please do.
It's coming to my understanding more and more that the one thing that everybody on the planet seems to need and will do almost anything for is to be respected, to be seen, to be witnessed, that I live, I am here, and to be well thought of. It seems to explain the state of our country right now, the desire for respect and recognition. It will drive whole countries like Germany into World War II. They wanted to be great again. So I had no idea what an enormous drive that is. And it seems to affect everybody everywhere to be respected and well liked. So my goal, and I didn't realize it was for a long time now, to give that to everywhere I go, to give the deep listening, to give that sense of I see you and I think well of you. And it sounds very simple, but it's almost miraculous. In my 30 plus years as a financial planner, I found early on that if I would start out by asking the client questions about themselves, sooner or later, you'll find something you admire. And, sometimes it takes a while, but you will find something you admire. They raised 5 children, or they whatever. They stayed faithful to their wives. They're married for 50 years, whatever. You can find something you admire. I mean, because the key is you have to truly admire it. So when you're feeling that sense of true admiration from your heart, then you have to communicate that to the client. And once they understand that you think well of them, then the relationship can begin over fixing their finances, making them not feel so guilty about what they haven't done. The relief of somebody thinks well of me and opens up all the doors. No trusted relationship seems to be able to start until that acknowledgement of your esteem for them is there. There's probably a lot more to that than I understand, but that little piece has been an invaluable gift. So it doesn't matter what they do with that somebody in the world thinks highly of them is something they'll carry away with them, and it will affect decisions that they make down the road.
Oh, true. Thank you, Diane.
In other words, you try your best not to be judgmental as far as if you're a financial planner. Oh, they just let's use a common one. They just drunk all their money away. You basically say they might have, but how can we? But now that they're sober, how can we? How can I treat them with respect and not judge them for their past? Is that what you're trying to say?
Right.
And another element of what you said, Diane, I think is being in the present. Instead of talking about the past of people, what they could have or should have done. And, you're talking about now.
Right. I must confess, I do have judgments and I don't know how to get rid of them that I've accumulated through my life. And I don't know that I'm able to drop those judgments about that they haven't treated themselves well health-wise, because I'm a health nut. But nevertheless, regardless of those, they have done something that I admire. And the fact that they understand that I see that, I witness it, and I'm telling them that I admire that. And it's coming from a real place of admiration.
Yeah, thank you. Normally in a conversation, if I was the host, I would interrupt, say, "Oh, you're at 2 minutes," or "No crosstalk," and that's kind of how they set it up, just so you know. I mean, this is fine. We're in just a practice session here, but yeah, they're pretty good about making sure everybody gets their 2 minutes to share, and then another 2 minutes later on. And so that's it keeps it real civil, because you can imagine if there was, like, say, somebody far right and somebody far left, it could just turn into a heated debate, right? And everybody would just kind of click off, say, "This is no fun." So they do a real good job of giving us the conversation guide, you know, the agreements, like no crosstalk and other things. April Hill didn't read all the way through, which is fine. But, you know, basically it's a lot about listening, being to the point, being purposeful. And so, like I said, our spiritual growth conversations will be a little bit different, but it's all about creating as civil of conversation as possible, where everybody gets to listen a lot and but has their time to share their thoughts. And I wouldn't mind
Mr.
doing.
Thomas, I'm
Yes?
appreciative that you mentioned those things. Yes. And that is what I was very faintly flickering on previously of, if you choose to do this, we have already considered a training ground. And if you want practice with us, and then the other point I was going to make is see how quickly Brother Charles and Sister Diane were allowed to go deeply within themselves just within that one opportunity, and how we can affect the world in simply being the example and shining our light. Thank you for
Well
sharing.
said. Yeah, well said. Yeah, and thank everybody. So yeah, this is why I wanted to kind of do it as a little bit of a practice run, just to give you a feeling of how it works. And if you allow me, I'd like to answer that: what sense of purpose, mission, duty guides you in your life? I haven't thought about it, but that's the way it is. You just, here you are. And well, for me, my sense of purpose is, and mission and duty is, I really see the potential of humanity, I guess. And so for me, I make it my mission to try to find ways to help people, to, you know, find situations where I can help as I pass by, or just help in the moment, or contribute to somebody in a way that actually contributes to them, isn't just giving them money that may not help them at all. And I really feel a duty, like I've been given something really special, and it's my duty and obligation, my mission, to share it as much as I can. As long as I live, I'll never stop doing that. And so it's kind of like when you see me, you're probably going to see me looking for opportunities to make a difference in whatever arena I'm in. That's just how I've wired myself throughout my life. And so that's what you get.
I'm going to stop the sharing if you
Thank you.
can, so we can see everybody.
Oh, sure. That's fine. Well, we can't really do the rest of the talking points, though. That's okay.
Oh, well, no, I can, go ahead, redo it. I just didn't realize that you were going to continue that way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's do this a little bit longer here. Let me see where we were at here.
We just have to share it.
Oh, I got to click share. Okay. So the last two parts of this, then, I just want to make sure we got to see how this worked. So exploring the topic is what we're actually here for. Everything else kind of brought us up to that point. And would a volunteer like to read this opening paragraph here? So we already read that. It was at the beginning, Diane, that we read that. So it tells us what stewardship is. And so now each participant can take 2 minutes to answer a question without interruption or crosstalk. And after, the group may take a few minutes for clarifying and follow-up questions or responses. And we'll probably have time, a normal call, we'd have time for maybe 2 or 3 rounds of this. So each person takes a couple minutes and we do it again. And if you have a lot of people, you don't get as many opportunities to speak. And if you only got, say, 5 people, you probably do 3 rounds of this. And so you can cover different questions. So who would like to answer one of these questions? Are you able to read them okay?
Very tiny.
You want me to read them?
I'll see if I can make it bigger here. Let's see. Whoop, not too big. There we go. It'll stay in my screen in the proper place. Doesn't seem to want to. Can't slide it over. I'm sorry. Get rid of that. Okay. How about somebody who hasn't spoken today? Anybody want to take a shot at one of those?
Which is a host tactic. Thank you.
Yes.
Drawing out, except what we know about these conversations, everyone speaks.
In turn.
You know,
yeah.
Yes.
You can either wait for somebody to volunteer, or you can just look at your screen and like, oh, I got Phil, Charles, Diane, April, Mark, you know. So I would just go in the order I see it on my screen. Otherwise, you wait for somebody to build up the courage to speak. So it takes too much time. Mark, somebody on your table, would you guys, anybody there want to share? Not sure. You're muted. So.
Are we unmuted?
Yeah. Now you're good.
We're too far away from the screen the way we are.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Well, it seemed like
I'll do it.
All right.
we're hearing you.
There he is.
Andrew.
I'm here. Andrew. Hello, everybody.
Hey, Andrew.
Great. This is a great topic. Thank you for sharing.
Cool.
So what happens when you hear the word stewardship? How does that apply to the care of your spiritual self? You know, I really think we have a big responsibility to care for our own spiritual self, and so that we can, you know, try to lead or inspire others to find their spiritual self as well, and know that that exists. Even, I mean, a lot of people don't even believe that exists, and you know, and our actions in today have huge impact on what happens with the future, right? So a lot of people don't believe that they have any that it's just all predetermined, and that we don't have any influence, or that much influence over the future. But we know, I know that we do. We have a huge responsibility, and we have this impactful spirit-led, you know, spirit-led decisions impact the future greatly, not just for us, but for the people around us. So we need to be really careful about the decisions we make, and you know, align them with our spiritual indwelling thought adjuster, you know, and our plan, our path for our life. So I think that, you know, more time we spend in prayer, meditation, and worship, becoming spiritually adjusted and in tune with what our higher purpose is, then the more we'll be able to share that with others, and lead them into finding what their purpose is in life. And as we know, you know, that the harmony is way beyond our human understanding, you know, because these thought adjusters, they obviously all know each other. They're all from the same source and center, you know. So and so I always think back to that, you know, our thought adjusters know everything and everyone, and they know what we need to do to make an influence in somebody else's life. So if we're following that leading, then hopefully we can get out of our own thoughts and think more of others.
So Andrew, that was well said. Can you go back and say what you said about thought adjusters, but not use any Urantia terms? Or you
Yeah,
think-
well, I can't.
Well, there's other words that could describe that, like the
Yeah, I
inner-
know. We're indwelt by the Spirit of God. We're also, in meditation, in a lot of the ancient, especially Hindu religion, they talk about, the drop of water returning back to the sea, and that drop of water in the analogy is a great analogy for the thought adjuster, returning back to paradise, with the son, with the child. And so, and taking it with us. So I think of that in terms of other religions, and all religions have that thread of truth through it. And so our stewardship is to protect that spirit, and not just, and then share it with others and let people know that's within them, be it whatever religion they happen to be in. And the more we can understand diversity of religions, but with that, knowing what that thread is through them and being able to tie back to that, then I think that helps people communicate together and trust each other.
Right. Thank you, Andrew. I think we'll end screen sharing now, because the last part is just reflecting on the conversation, right? And I think we'll stop the screen share. And now we can see each other. So one thing I'd like to have us think about, and Andrew, thank you, that was really good. And did you notice how hard it was to not talk about Urantia, right? Not use Urantia
Yeah.
Oh,
terms.
especially with this crowd. I mean,
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And
what else are we going to talk about? Exactly. Yeah. So
well,
no, but
yeah, my question is, if you were in just a living room conversation with people from who knows where that never heard of the Urantia book, would you be able to not say thought adjuster? Would you have that next term, inner spirit, inner light, or whatever, ready to go?
A good exercise for that would be, and this trick works if you have a really difficult paragraph in the Urantia book. So if you want to try this would be a good exercise. Is to literally pick any paragraph. Let's use the forward as an example, since that's one of the most difficult parts of the book. Pick a paragraph and try and paraphrase the paragraph. Shut up, computer. That's my screen reader. Try and paraphrase the paragraph literally, sentence by sentence, and that will give you a good understanding of the paragraph, but it will also give you an understanding of how would I discuss this term or this concept without mentioning the terminology. And if you want to use that as an exercise, pick a paragraph with the thought that mentions the thought adjuster or mystery monitor or whatever. And let's run through it and try to paraphrase it, see what happens. That may be a good exercise for us to do as a practical illustration of this.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to to get practice. We could use a lot of practice. And I'm a big fan of keeping it simple. Jesus used very simple teachings, right? They weren't complex, and I think we can do well to do that. I know it's about coming up on 5, so I just want to do a couple of thoughts to wrap up here. So you can go on to your next part. Let's see if I can find my thing here. Here it is. So hopefully today I've been able to express to you that the highways that Jesus traveled in dusty sandals, right, have now morphed into internet highways and other types of highways where people meet and traverse on, right? So I think the goal, in order to keep up and to modify and reinvent them, remaster the art of living, is to say, oh, look, here's a highway. let's get on it and see what happens. Let's see what happens on this highway. And don't worry about failure. Don't worry about, oh, I don't know how to do this. Don't worry about any of this. Just jump onto these conversations, do your best, enjoy these other people. It's so fun to meet people from all over the world that are just like you. They're just on this journey on earth. And I would never have met these wonderful people except for this new technology we have. And some people I've become friends with. We email back and forth, we talk on the phone because they're really curious. And I have delivered a few Urantia books, I have turned people on to them. I don't rarely mention it, but sometimes it's the end of the meeting and a couple of people are still on and people have just bared their soul or looking for more truth. Or, you know, I said, well, hold on a second, let me just stay on the call here. We'll talk a little bit more. And I tell them about the Urantia book, right? Because they're so hungry. They're just so hungry, right? And they've looked everywhere, right? One gal was a Catholic and one gal was a scientist and one guy was, you know, so it's really important. So we don't speak Urantiese. We are really careful to listen. I think so many things we've learned today is like really important. And we could talk about this for a long time. And I really feel honored to have been here today and talk to you about this. And my email, my phone number in the text. I'd love to talk to you if you want to learn more about that. April, Helen, and I are going to keep doing calls. So if you jump on this Stewardship of Spirituality call with her, you'll be able to learn a few things. But don't speak Urantiese. It's not a Urantia book study group. Cheryl.
Sorry.
Cheryl had something to say.
I'd like to say that reminds me of what you just said about meeting people around the world. And I've had the opportunity just in casual conversation on miscellaneous apps to create a friendship with a person in India, in South Korea, and in Tehran. And we got together because the one in India, we were sharing things in common. And we had a conversation saying that I think we have, more things in common than we have in difference. And we just need to set our vision to see and recognize those commonalities and build on those. And then we can expand our friendships. And so, this person, we're still friends now, and it's going on 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
And so the other thing is that the gal in Tehran has, our friendship has grown the way that we started. And the same thing with the gentleman in India, because I didn't know, I come from a Christian background. So I'm familiar, I can deal with Bible thumpers and anything that's semi-related to any of that. And it flows. I have no idea of these other religious backgrounds. So my thing to keep in the thing with the commonalities is I ask them, could you share something about your religious belief system and what you hold dear to you and why it works for you. And I want to learn. I'm eager to know because it's different from what my experience is. And they're more than willing to open up and share these things. Then you start getting a real, difference, and you get an understanding. The gentleman in India, I was able to ask, well, what about all these gods, and you have so many temples? And he laughed. He says, yeah, there's a temple on every corner, on every block. He said, but these gods, these many gods that you're referring to, he says, in mythology, click, they had their purposes to, protect certain areas. And that was the belief of our people at that time. And so from talking with him, I can see he has a Christian influence into his Hindu belief system. And we shared a lot of things on that. then the gal in Tehran, she shared with me a little bit of the Islam, but she was so paranoid and so afraid to do anything. And she was feeling so lonesome. And so I shared with her that, I have a best friend, and he helps me with everything and he's always there. And so, and she says, and who's that? And I said, well, his name is Jesus. Oh, I know about him. He's one of the prophets. And so we built from that to where I told her that it was, something that she could talk to him even silently, and he heard her. She didn't have to speak out loud. So she started working with that, and she sent me many emails. She is now moved to Montreal on a visa to relocate. She's eager to get close enough that we can physically meet, and I'm in California. Then the individual in South Korea, we just spoke so general. It was a moral support. And just that focus was, again, it was all on the Father's love. And he was dealing with issues. And he got, in the end, he contacted me a couple years later and he says, you've been silent lately. And I had been really, really ill and I was on oxygen. And so anyway, he says, I just want to know what it is, where you get your strong faith from. He says, I want to know where you get that, because I want to be able to know that I'm going to go where you say you're going, so that I can meet you when we get there after this life. And I'm going, oh, thank you, Father. So it's all staying, and never was the Urantia book mentioned, but it was a focus on truth. And I tried to stay in contact with my adjuster, with my seraphim, with the Spirit of God, with the Holy Spirit, and all of our spiritual influences, so that the Spirit would flow and say what it was that this person needed, that they would get fed what they needed spiritually. And just to be that open channel, that pipeline, to allow that to flow to them. And, never without this technology, and never having been grounded on an early medical retirement, because I basically couldn't even walk. And I felt this urge to pray, okay, Father, once again, you're going to have to bring them to me, because I can't go anywhere. And this is what has come out of it.
Wow.
And I couldn't be more thrilled.
Cheryl, that's a wonderful contribution to the end of this
Yes,
conversation.
thank you
It's
very
just
much.
perfect. I mean, you hit it right on the head. and the good news is we can all have those wonderful connections and lifelong friendships and ongoing conversations with people. It's just up to us to kind of step out onto the highway, so to say, whatever highway that is, out on the byways and pathways of life. So thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this. And the music, the loud music, is about to start right next to me. So it's time for me to adios, I think. But
Well, Thomas, thank you so much for this wonderful time together. Seems like the secret of your talk is that it's coming from inside of you, as opposed to the words you actually use to talk to someone, that they're sensing something else that you're offering them.
Yeah,
right.
thank you so much, Thomas. It was really wonderful. It looked like I might have disappeared for a little while, but I was listening on my phone. And Cheryl, that last story you shared was lovely. And it's great to see you, April Helen, and everybody else. I have to run. I've got another engagement, but goodbye to everybody and love you all.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you for coming, Andrea.
Bye, Andrea.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you so much. I'm gonna check off, and thank you. Look, and feel free to contact me, anybody, if you want to. Okay?
Well, thank you for the introduction to this wonderful website. We'll be talking with you frequently.
Jump on and do a conversation as soon as you can. You'd all be great at
Thank
it.
you, Thomas.
All right.
Thank you, Thomas.
Bye now.
Thank you all for coming. If there's anyone who wants to hang out, just hang into this and we'll continue after a couple of minutes.
Let's say, yeah, let's have a break. I guess we're gonna have maybe some meal. If you're ready to have a meal, we'll bring it out here and then we'll have a grace and then we'll, just continue conversation. So let's have a 5-minute break or so and we'll come back.
And I'll stay on here.
I think I'll just leave it this way instead of,
Yeah, just leave it open.
Yeah.
No, one thing that kept popping into my head throughout this whole thing was there is a particular section, and I'm not sure, it's somewhere in part 4 called Instructions to Teachers and Believers. And for whatever reason, that just kept popping into my head off and on throughout this entire meeting.
Well, there is a website that I would urge you to take a look at, Charles. It's called The Christ Experiment.
I have it on my favorites.
Oh, good, because they deal with people who are Bible believers more than any other group I know.
That's what I'm best at dealing with in the South is hostility to no end, basically.
Well, I understand it. It's a very protective environment. And you would only build protections if you have fears about something coming to get your children and carry them off into some other beliefs. That I would think that they would feel greatly threatened by most of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So that, when you're trying to hang on to traditional beliefs, then anything new is a threat.
Yep.
So you're courageous to try and deal with that wall of fear.
Well, like I said, I've introduced the Urantia book to multiple people. And one of them, I always use Urantia.org because to me, that's an easier website to get around as a blind person. And one guy spent about 5 seconds on the foundation's website. And on their homepage, they have something like who was the first human family or something like that or whatever. And apparently he clicked on it. And the minute when he saw that it was not the traditional Adam and Eve, he said, nope, not interested, and clicked off. And he got really offended that another belief system would have that viewpoint. And his basic idea was that since it's not the Bible, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. And that's the basic problem in the South you're dealing with.
They're settling. I came out of that same thing. I came out of conservative Baptist.
Yeah.
Ooh, and I call it the no-no church.
Yeah.
Nothing was allowed. You know, it's just if it wasn't church related. And my first revelation that it wasn't the really codex that it was being taught to be was when I was friends, because they were about the same age as me, the preacher's kids. And they got allowed to go to this concert in town. And that was a big no-no. And so, I had been turning down concert invites with my best friends, and we weren't going to be going to, anything that was really out of line that we would be ashamed to be caught at. But it's just that, the church doctrine was that you didn't do those things. You didn't go to the movies. You didn't go to dances. You didn't even dance in your front room. In fact, in that church, you didn't even dance in the spirit.
Yeah.
And so anyway, with all of that, there's so much that what I've taken and learned from that is that they never were allowed to think for themselves. Their ecclesiastical authority was given over to the preacher and the board of deacons. And when we moved from Michigan to California, we had to get a letter transferring our membership and introducing us to the California crowd, to say that we were legitimate members, and to carry forth our thing. And even at that, we still had to be baptized again into the new church. And so it was like, well, there's a lot of contradictions going on here, but I'm okay with it. That doesn't bother me. It just, now I know I'm really clean because now I've been baptized twice. Yeah. And so if it makes them feel good, okay, I don't see any harm in it. And at that time, I was only like 15 years old. And so I'm seeing all of these things up close and personal, and where the information is coming from, I don't know. But I remember not feeling comfortable with their concept of the Father. And I remember going out in our side yard at night and looking up at the sky and yelling at God and saying, okay, here I am, go ahead, strike me dead, because you're just waiting to catch me doing something wrong, so here's your best shot, and
well, I'm like you.
it didn't happen,
Yeah. Well, I was raised ultra conservative like you are, Bible believing, literal, ultra literal, six-day creation,
Yeah.
So I came across the Urantia book when I was in college. I was looking up Melchizedek. I'm like, I know there are 3 biblical references, but where in the heck are they? Came across the Urantia book, and you're in college, so you don't quite have time to read a 2,100-page book on top of everything else. So I filed it away. When I was out of college, I read the Urantia book for entertainment. I was bored. And it took me a month to read it, because I was reading like 5 or 6 hours a day, because at the time I did not have a job or anything like that. So time number 1, okay, I'll just move on. But I was researching the whole time, and when I come across the typical anti-Urantian stuff put out by Christianity, I said, okay, this book is interesting. However, there's no Urantia book really Christian to Urantia missionaries. I'm going to become the first one. And what really irritated me was when someone wrote, look, how can they tell me what's wrong with my religion if they will not even attempt to study it? That really got under my skin. So I said, okay, I'm going to read it. So I read it a second time, this time taking notes. Get to the end, and I was, quite frankly, mad. I was, mad as a hornet, as I say in the South. So here I go, emailing the fellowship and the foundation, basically saying, how dare this book contradict everything I was ever taught? So the foundation didn't respond. The fellowship responded by giving me a couple of websites or whatever. But
let me get some food.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Exactly. But so I said, okay, I think before I go any further, I should read my Bible. So I got one of those chronological year-long Bible reading plans. I said, I'm just going to assume the days don't exist. And I'm just going to use it as a guide list. So I read the Bible, naturally King James. And I said, okay, I'm going to use the same technique that the Urantia book uses. Read it by yourself and let it stand or fall alone.
Yep.
So I read the Bible, and I was very disturbed by the time I got through with it. The contradictions, the violence, yada, yada, yada. So I had 3 choices. I could either A, convert to a different faith. And by then I had read at least the broad outlines of what the majority of the world believed, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever. I wasn't comfortable with that.
Hey, Charles.
Yeah.
Let's have a little grace, because we were going to have some dinner here.
All right.
And if I don't know how many people are going to do that, but I wanted to at least give those people a chance. I've got something to eat. I think Diane is getting something.
Yeah, she's pulling it right now.
And so, but before that, I want to, maybe you'd like to offer grace for us.
I would be honored. Are we ready, or do we want to?
Well,
wait till-
let's wait until Diane gets back in the
Yeah,
thing there, but I don't know where she went, probably to get the food.
mm.
Um,
Well,
Anybody else here? Well, let's see. I guess we have two other people who are not showing video.
who was the one I was just talking to?
Cheryl.
Cheryl, okay.
Yeah,
I will finish my points and then
go
I'll
ahead.
do Grace.
Go on.
So my choice was either A, no, I'll put it this way. A, become an atheist. I was not comfortable with that because of my raising, and God helped me a lot. B, become more liberal in my faith. Well, I'm not wired that way. I can't say, well, this didn't happen this way when the Bible, since I believed the Bible at the time, says it happened this way. Or C, look at a different faith. So I said, okay, I know the broad outlines of other religions. I'm not happy with them. So I'm going to reread the Urantia book. So I had to read the Urantia book 3 times before I became a believer. And somewhere in this little mix, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Mark Kurtz. He's from Fairhope, Alabama, and he also has a house in Indiana. Somehow in this mix, I met him and helped start the Alabama Urantia Book Study Group.
Awesome. What happened with me, Charles, was after we moved to California, that I was looking, I kept asking questions because I found all this Swiss cheese in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so, especially back in the Old Testament in Genesis, and I'd be studying it and reading along, and all of a sudden, whoop, I'm down in another hole. What happened here? What's missing? And so I would go to the next service, and I was always, whenever the church doors were open, I was taken as a child. So from the time I was 5 till when I was 15, it was just intensive Bible study and conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I went to the youth leader, and I didn't get an answer, and he just smiled and he said, go back and read your scripture again, and you'll get a fuller understanding. He says, and then come back and we'll discuss it. So I went home, I read it, I prayed,